You're new to Palia, or you've just mostly stuck to yourself, but you've heard about the glorious cake parties and you have to know how they work. And if you're like me and have crippling social anxiety when it comes to new things, you want to know every little detail about it so you can feel prepared. Well, look no further, because today I'm going to do just that. So get out your notepad and start taking notes. And quickly, before we get into today's video, if you do find this video helpful, please consider subscribing to help support. Do you need to know the recipe to participate? Do you really make a lot of money doing these? Let's start out by making a cake. We're going to speed it up because this took about 3 minutes and 10 seconds to fully complete. Now that we were able to get a look at how a cake is made and just how much time and ingredients goes into making them yourself, we can understand that it would be easier if we had multiple people. That's what a cake party is all about. There's one person to cover each step of the process to bring the cook time down. Ingredients you need from 22 to about 0 to 3, depending on what role you take. So let's take a look at the role breakdown. I'm going to be using paliaparty.app. This is actually a fan-made resource for cooking and other parties in Palia, and the breakdown is a perfect example of how these cake parties work. So this is what the general breakdown is going to look like for a cake party, and let's start with the starter position. As the starter, you will only need 1 starred blueberry for each cake that you're completing. So if you're doing a 50 cake party, you would need 50 starred blueberries. You will be starting the recipe, adding the ingredients, and finishing and claiming the cake recipe. You will be required to know the recipe in order to take this position because you'll be starting the recipe. And there's only one of this position. A lot of times the host will take the starter position, but not always. Now let's take a look at the fruit froster position. You will need 1 starred apple or 1 starred blueberry per cake. Most hosts will require you to use starred apples because they boost the value of the cake, making it more worth it. You will also need 1 sugar for each cake that you do. You can buy the sugar from Zeki's shop for 20 gold each, so if you're doing 100 cakes, that would be 2,000 gold. All you'll be doing for this position is just anything else like sweet leaf to start your roll. You will also not be required to know the recipe to do this position, and there are 3 of this position. Now, let's take a look at the sweet leaf position. The sweet leaf position, also known as SL or sometimes leafer, only requires 1 sweet leaf per cake. Usually, they don't require starred sweet leaf, thankfully, because most of the time you will have to gather these manually. Now, you can buy these with your skill medals from Ashura. However, it's, I believe, 10 skill medals per sweet leaf. But if you want to save up your skill medals to buy other things, which I currently am, that means that you only have the option of manually foraging for them, so it can be a bit difficult to gather them. But all you'll need to do for this is grind up the sweet leaf, and you do want to make sure that you are paying attention to the entire process, because as soon as the next cake recipe starts, you want to be the first on the line to be doing your job, because there are other positions that require your sweet leaf. You will not be required to know the recipe for this position, and there are also 4 of this position. Moving on to the batter position. For the batter position, you'll need 1 butter, 1 flour, and 1 egg for every cake that you do. All you're going to do is mix the batter as soon as you can once the sweet leafers are done. You won't be required to know the recipe. There are 3 of this position, and you can and will have to buy all the ingredients from Zeki's general store. Per cake. I was trying to put 3,000 gold per 50 cakes, but it's actually 3,700 gold per 50 cakes and about 7,400 per 100 cakes. So it's just 74 gold per cake. Now let's take a look at the regular frosting position. For the regular frosting position, you will need 1 milk and 1 butter for each cake that you make. You will need to buy these ingredients from Zeki for about 70 gold per cake. For this position, you will need to mix the frosting after the batter has been mixed. The reason you wait is because you'll be using 1 of the 4 sweet leaves, and you want to let the batter makers go first so that the cakes can go into the oven as soon as possible. You will not be required to know the recipe, and there is only 1 of this position. Next, let's look at the oven positions. The great thing about the oven position is that you won't need to bring any ingredients. This is a completely free roll. So this is perfect for people who have spent all their gold, or for people who have never done a cake party before and don't have a lot of gold to begin with. And all you'll be doing for this roll is waiting for the batter to be made and then putting it into the oven immediately. You're not required to know the recipe for this roll. There are 3 of this position, and just a special note, some hosts may not allow free rolls. They may require other non-free rolls to double up and complete those rolls. And last but not least, let's take a look at the spreading roll. The spreading position is another free roll. You will need to pay attention to the cake being baked and start the task as soon as the cakes come out of the oven. You won't be required to know the recipe, and there are 3 of this position. So how much gold can we really expect to make from these cake parties? Well, let's take a look at a clip that I took after doing a 50 cake party, and you can see that we made just about 35,000 gold from 50 cakes. So, all in all, I do think these cake parties are worth it if you've got some time to spare, and really all you need to know is your role. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you haven't been able to tell already, Palia is a very welcoming community to new players. And just a friendly reminder, it's okay to be new to something. Also, it can take like 45 minutes to an hour per 50 cakes, so just make sure you set some time aside if you do plan on doing a cake party. But that's going to be it for today. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Be sure to leave your questions in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!